Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew. I just finished up a project that I'm super excited to share with you. I was recently chatting with a subscriber who had really lovely things to say about my channel, and he particularly liked that I was making upcycled men's DIY fashion. There aren't too many of us doing the men's upcycled fashion thing on YouTube, and so he really appreciated that, and I asked him what he wanted to see more of, and he said that he was interested in seeing more statement jackets. So I had sort of had an idea for a while, and I thought I would bring it to life for the holiday season because that felt like the appropriate time for sequins. Shockingly, I have no beaded or sequin pieces in my closet, so I thought this was the time to change that up. So, cut to me at Goodwill.
I started by making a trip to Goodwill to see what I could source for my jacket. I was looking for a black formal blazer that fit well, and a women's sequin or beaded garment of some kind that could be taken apart and appliqued to the jacket. I was thinking a vintage 80s piece might be ideal for the heavy embellishment. I got lucky in the suiting department. I found two solid contenders for the jacket. One beautiful wool Hugo Boss blazer with strong shoulders and a super wide lapel that felt very Tom Ford to me, and one shawl collar tuxedo jacket. The shawl collar jacket was a little short in the sleeves. I picked it up anyway for another project I have in mind. But the Boss blazer was definitely the right choice for this project. The embellished fabric piece was a little bit tougher to find. I did come across two 80s-ish pieces with heavy embellishment, but the iridescence on this one looked a little cheesy, and the solid black was a little boring. In general, sequins and beading are tricky to get right since they can easily come across as costumey or cheap. I considered trying to layer this brocade, but it would have been really tricky, and this set was priced kind of high. I came across this gold sequin dress. Although the cut of the dress wasn't much to get excited about, the fabric looked expensive. The solid gold color was a nice tone, and the small size of the sequins felt more luxurious than larger sequins would be. Also, the mesh base for the sequins was black, which would be really forgiving in blending into my black base jacket. However, this fabric wouldn't really work for my original plan, which relied more on existing patterns in the fabric, given that this fabric was solid. But it was my best option, and I actually had a great idea for it. I've been really into MC Escher lately. He's a Dutch artist famous for his mathematical tessellation style drawings. Although I've been familiar with his work for a long time, I recently came across it in a new form in the fall-winter 2009 Alexander McQueen show. I'm a huge McQueen fan, so I had seen these pieces in this collection before, but I didn't put the McQueen looks and the MC Escher reference together in my head. I'm thinking our jacket can take inspiration from the diagonal, asymmetrical placement of the graphics on this dress and follow the forms of this particular MC Escher piece that I was really drawn to. I started designing as I often do now by laying the jacket flat and snapping some pics that I imported into Keynote, which is like the Apple version of PowerPoint. I probably should learn to use Photoshop more at some point, but I'm really comfortable with this user interface, so I use it for everything. I drag the MC Escher piece in and lower the opacity to see the jacket through so I can play with the placement. Of course, things will look really different in 3D and with the solid gold sequins, but it's nice to get a game plan going. The white sections are where the sequins will go, and the black sections will be just the jacket. I knew I wanted the birds to be super sparse on one side and build across the front. Things started to make more sense when I tilted the whole image on an angle to be able to fit more birds across the front. I threw in some black triangles to help me visualize the lapels. The actual jacket ends up more like this, but at the time I apparently thought more birds were needed across the back. Once I had something that felt workable, I compared the measurements of the jacket to the pixel numbers in the final size of my image to know how large the image would need to be scaled for my template. Whoever said I would never use algebra was dead wrong. With those numbers on hand, I headed over to rasterbator.net, which is my go-to for enlarging images for printing. You might remember that I used this site in one of my very first videos, the graffiti bathroom wall. I play around with the settings to get close to my dimensions and export it as a PDF. Print ready. I started cutting out the white birds on the right side. Gluing is necessary to join the pages. This will be my pattern to experiment with placement on the jacket and to cut the fabric with. Things became less defined as I approached the left side of the piece since the white birds morph into the background. Here, I attached all of the full pages together and then carefully cut away the black birds. I start pinning the pieces onto the jacket as I go, partly to keep track of which pieces go where. I printed an extra copy of the pattern in case I need a reference or mess up a cut. Whereas in my sketch the birds passed over the sleeve on the left side, I felt it was better to leave that sleeve clean and wrap the birds around the body. With all the smaller pieces pinned in place, I line up the big background piece and pin it to the jacket, wrapping it as best I could around the form. It is paper after all. Seeing where it falls, I made some bold decisions and cut away the excess. I follow the big curved line to give a boundary, and then I estimate the last bird shape at the top to make that ending make sense. Finally, I follow the last square at the bottom, but leave the little line to trail all the way off the edge. That feels like a nice end for it. With all the patterns pinned in place, we need to try on. I'm into it. Now onto fabric. I start by cutting away the liner of the dress from the inside. I want to have as much fabric to lie as flat as possible without spending hours taking the whole dress apart. With a little seam ripper action, we got there pretty quickly. The skirt of the dress had 2 smaller back panels and 1 larger front panel. I started by placing my individual birds along one of the back panels. I will need to save that big front panel for the big pattern piece that will go along the back of my jacket. I pinned each piece in place facing down on the wrong side of the fabric so that I could see everything a little bit more clearly. I was hoping to be able to avoid cutting the sequins altogether by cutting in between them, but my pieces were so small and specific that I had to cut across them. Thus, I did not use my good fabric scissors for this. They're too precious. Since the sequins are held onto the fabric by threads, I knew that cutting those threads would cause them to unravel and my sequins to fall off. I tried to curb this by immediately placing each piece on a sheet of scrap paper after cutting it, and using fray check to glue any cut threads. This effort was moderately successful, I think. I definitely have some issues later with sequins falling off in some sections, but overall I think it was worth the extra effort and saved me some grief. The tessellations in the design came in handy with my cutting, since I was able to fit each piece really closely along the lines of the one cut before. This gave me much less waste. I was able to cut all of the pieces except the large back piece out of one back panel of the dress. Plenty of sequins left for the next project. When cutting the large back panel, I made sure to take my time and use lots of pins. I consulted my spare pattern a lot when pinning the pieces in place. The way the pieces fit together is crucial to the design, so I made sure to be thorough in lining up the attachment points from piece to piece. Many adjustments were made to get the angles and edges to line up. Try on number 2. And now we sew, and sew, and sew, and sew, and sew. Before I sew each piece, I add a few extra pins to secure it. Of course, hand sewing was the only way to go. I was careful to catch individual sequins along the edge, especially the at-risk sequins whose strings got chopped in the cutting process. I made sure to grab only the top layer of fabric so that my lining would remain clean and able to move freely. The mesh base fabric had a little bit of stretch, so I was able to manipulate it in some sections to help my pieces meet up at the right spots. A couple of the sequin pieces overlap the buttons, so I sewed around part way, marked where the button lined up with a pin, and then cut the button out from underneath. I sewed it right back on top where I had marked. For the pocket flap, I sewed part of the sequin piece in place to be sure to get the placement of all the pieces to line up. Then I carefully cut along the edge of the pocket flap to allow it to move freely. I stuck some scrap paper behind the cut edges and used my fray check again to seal the edges. After they dried, I could easily stitch them down. I followed the same process for the front jacket opening. Finally, I wrapped the pieces at the bottom of the jacket around the edge and stitched them down underneath the fold of the liner. And with that, the jacket is done. Check it out. What do you think? Was it worth all the hand sewing? Where should I wear it? I really love hearing from you guys in the comments. It means so much to me that you take the time to watch and share your thoughts. For those who've been watching a lot, what's your favorite thing that I made this year? As always, if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and consider hitting that subscribe button as well. See you next year.